For over 50 episodes, Kiyaya and Daniel have been here sharing lots and lots of great books. We look forward to the next 50 episodes. Join us every day at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard for Let's Get Cozy, because it's story time with Kiyaya and Daniel. Maniac Thursday is here, and Maggie is back for another guest hosting appearance. She'll be finishing her guest hosting with Maniac Magee today with the readings of chapters 30 through 33. Sit back, relax. Kiyaya and I are ready to get cozy, because it's story time with Kiyaya and Daniel. Are you a singer, an actor, an artist, a crocheter, a knitter, a cross-stitcher, a potter? Are you a crafter? Coming soon to Rude Rangers TV is Crafty Conversations with... That's right, my outspoken friend Kiyaya and I are going to be launching our new show on Rude Rangers TV this spring. Email us at craftyconversations@STITCHINGwolfdesigns.com if you're interested in sharing your story with us. Follow us on our social media accounts. Or check our website out, www.STITCHINGwolfdesigns.com, or give us a call, 516-274-0350. The possibilities are endless. Stories are such an important part of our lives. Join my friend Kiyaya and I for Get Cozy, because it's story time with Kiyaya and Daniel, where we share some of the greatest picture books and chapters from children's and young adult literature to inspire you to keep embedding literacy into your days. I'm Daniel, and Kiyaya and I are here to share this all with you.
Chapter 30. If Thanksgiving was wonderful, Christmas was paradise. By now, Grayson had officially moved out of the Y and into 101 Bandshell Boulevard, thanks to his long acquaintanceship with the locker room attendant. He and Maniac were privileged to continue using the Y's shower facilities at their pleasure. For decoration outside, they nailed a wrench to the door. There was only one small window, but it had no sill to hold a candle, so some spray snow had to do. Inside was another story. Santa's elves themselves would have felt at home. Strings of popcorn swooped across the ceiling. Evergreen branches flared at random, dispersing their piney aroma. Wherever there were a few vacant square inches, something Christmassy appeared. A matchbox crochet, a porcelain Santa, a partridge in a pear tree. One day, Grayson dragged a pair of 3 limbs in and started sewing away. When he was finished, a wooden reindeer stood in the room, big enough for Maniac to ride. Of course, the tree got the most attention of all. By the time the two of them finished trimming it, their tree-trimming instincts have languished for so many Christmases. Hardly a pine needle could be seen under the tinsel and balls and whatnot. In fact, though they were delighted with their effort, the urge to trim was still full upon them. One room was simply too small to hold the spirit bursting. So they went outside and crossed the creek and tramped the woods until they came to a fine and proper evergreen. And there, their footsteps muffled by the carpet of pine needles, their every breath and whispered word arrayed in frosty white. They trimmed their second tree. This time the ornaments were nature's brilliant red and yellow necklaces of bittersweet, pungent pine cones, wine-red clusters of sumac berries, abandoned bird body boats, of milkweed, delicate thumb-sized goblets of Queen Anne's lace. Chapter 31. It was still dark when Maniac awoke on Christmas morning. Within an hour or two, the holiday would come bounding down the stairs and squealing round the tinsel trees of 2 mills. But for the moment, Christmas bided its time outside, a purer presence. Maniac shook Grayson awake, but stayed the old man's hand when he reached to turn on the light. They bundled themselves and ventured into the silent night. Maniac carried the paper bag. Snow had fallen several days before. In much of the town it had been plowed, shoveled, and slushed away, but in the park, along the creek, the woods, the playing fields, the playground, it still lay undisturbed, save for the tracks of rabbits and squirrels beyond the tall pines. Stars glittered like snowflakes, reluctant to fall. They visited their tree. They stood silently just to be near it, letting the magic of it drift over them. In the pine-patch moonlight, the Queen Anne's goblets looked for all the world like filigreed silver. They walked the creek woods all the way to the zoo, meandering wordlessly throughout the snowy enchantment. As if by design, they both stopped at the same spot above the half-submerged, rooty clump of a fallen tree. Somewhere under there, they knew, was the den of a family of muskrats. The old man laid a pine branch at the doorway. Maniac whispered, "Merry Christmas." They visited the animals at the zoo, and at least the outdoor ones, wishing them a happy holiday. The ducks seemed particularly pleased to see them. By the time they came to the buffalo pen, dawn was showing through the trees. Before the old man finished saying, "Want a boost?" Maniac was up and over the fence. If Mother Buffalo was glad to see the fence-hopping human again, she didn't show it. But Baby came trotting on over, and the two of them had a warm reunion. Before leaving, Maniac reached into the paper bag and brought out a present. "For you," he said. It was a scarf, or rather 3 scarves tied together. He wrapped them around Baby's neck. "Next year I'll get you stockings for your horns," he grinned. "If you have them by then." A final nuzzle and he was back over the fence. They headed back home as the town awoke, breaking fast as breakfast was eggnog and hot tea and cookies and carols and colored lights and love. As in all happy Christmas homes, the gifts were under the tree. Maniac gave Grayson a pair of gloves and a woolen cap and a book. The book did not appear to be as sturdy as the others lying around. The cover was blue construction paper, and the spine, instead of being bound, was stapled. The text was hand-lettered, and the pictures were stick figures. The title was "The Man Who Struck Out Willie Mays." The author's name, which Grayson read aloud with some difficulty, was Jeffrey L. Magee. Maniac, in his turn, opened packages to find a pair of gloves, a box of butterscotch crimpets, and a spanking snow-white, never-ever-used baseball. He was overjoyed. He rushed to the old man and hugged him. The old man put up with that for a second, then pulled away. "Hold on," he said. He went to one of the baseball equipment bags and reached in, tunneled down to the bottom, and came up with another package. This one wrapped crudely in newspaper. "Hide in this one," he said. "Didn't know if you're the kind of kid that sneaks looks." Maniac tore it open. He gaped helplessly when he saw what it was. To anyone else, it was a ratty old scrap of leather, barely recognizable as a baseball glove, fit for a garbage can. But Maniac knew at once this was Grayson's, the one he had played with all those years in the minors. It was limp, flat, the pocket since long gone. Slowly, timidly, as though entering a shrine, the boy's fingers crept into it. Flex curled the cracked leather, brought it back to shape, to life. He laid the new ball in the palm, pressed the glove and ball together, and the glove remembered and gave way and made a pocket for the ball. The boy could not take his eyes off the glove. The old man could not take his eyes off the boy. The record player finished the Christmas polka and clicked off, and for a long time there was silence. 5 days later, the old man was dead. Chapter 32. Most mornings, Grayson would be the first one out of bed. He would turn on the space heater, visit the bandshell laboratory, and heat up some water, get breakfast ready, and finally wake the boy with a gentle shake of the shoulder. On December 13th, it was the silence that woke Maniac, and the cold. The space heater wasn't on. No steaming cup sat on the table. The old man was still under the covers. Maniac went over. "Grayson!" He shook the old man. "Grayson!" He took the old man's hand. It was cold. "Grayson!" He didn't run to the superintendent's office. He didn't run to the nearest house. He knew. He held the cold, limp hand that had thrown the pitch that had struck out Willie Mays, that had betrayed the old man's stoic ways by giving him a squeeze. He began talking to the old man about places he had been on the road, about places the two of them might have gone to, about everything. Then he began to read out loud. He read aloud all the books the old man had learned to read, and he finished with the old man's favorite, Mike Mulligan's Steam Shovel. When he looked out the window, it was night. He dragged his chest protectors alongside the old man's mat and laid down, and only then, when he closed his eyes, did he cry. The funeral, such as it was, took place on the 3rd day of the new year. Maniac had at last gone to tell someone, the zookeeper, and from then on he pretty much stayed out of the way. Grayson came to the cemetery in a wooden box. The pallbearers were unknown to Maniac. They were members of the town's trash collecting corps, and they huffed and bent to lay the box over the hole. They smelled vaguely of pine and rotten fruit. Maniac was the only mourner. He had thought the park superintendent might show, or the attendant at the Y locker room, or maybe the lady who ran the park food stand in the summer. None was there. Only Maniac and the man from the funeral home, and the 6 pallbearers, and the 2 men off to the side smoking cigarettes and leaning on a little hole-digging tractor that made Maniac think of something. He smiled inwardly. "Hey, Grayson, look." Mike Mulligan's steam shovel had a baby. High above, a silver plane crossed the sky, silent as a spider. A voice startled Maniac. "When's he coming?" It was one of the pallbearers. The man from the funeral home pushed down the top of the back leather glove to expose his watch. "Should be here now. Should have been here 5 minutes ago. How long we gotta wait?" The funeral man shrugged. All but one of the pallbearers lit up cigarettes. Maniac wished he hadn't come. This event had nothing to do with the man who once lived in the body in the wooden box. "I'm freezing my kachongas off," a pallbearer announced. "Me too," said another. "Hey, called one of the gravediggers. "We ain't waiting all day to fill in that hole." Everyone looked to the man in the long black coat. He looked again at his watch. Traffic, probably. The minister, thought Maniac. That's who we're waiting for. A pallbearer walked over to the funeral man. "We hauled the stiff here. Ain't that enough? They only give us an hour." Another pallbearer chimed in. "Let's go get some donuts." "Hot coffee, baby." Loud clanks. A gravedigger was striking the baby steam shovel with a spade. The funeral man sighed. He pulled out his own cigarette, lit it from the glowing tip of the pallbearers. "Give it 2 more minutes, and then we'll see." Maniac waited for one of those minutes, searching the horizon for signs of a minister. Whatever was going to happen at the end of the next minute, he didn't want to see it, so he ran. "Hey, kid!" they called. "Yo, kid!" But he was running. Chapter 33. January of that year was too cold and dry for snow. It was a month of frozen hardness, of ice. Maniac drifted from hour to hour, day to day, alone with his memories, a stunned and solitary wanderer. He ate only to keep from starving, warmed his body only enough to keep it from freezing to death, ran only because there was no reason to stop. Even if the superintendent had allowed it, he could not have brought himself to stay at the bandshell. He returned only long enough to pick up a few things: a blanket, some non-perishable food, the glove, and as many books as he could squeeze into the old backpack satchel that had hauled Grayson's belongings around the minor leagues. Before he left for good, he got some paint and angrily brushed over the 101 on the door. During the days he ran, usually a slow jog, but sometimes he would suddenly sprint, furious 10 or 20-second bursts, as though trying to leave himself behind. Sometimes he walked. He crossed and recrossed the river. He wandered in all directions through all surrounding communities and townships: Bridgeport, Conshohocken, East Norriton, West Norriton, Jeffersonville, Plymouth, Worcester. Whenever he crossed the bridge over the Schuylkill, he turned his eyes so as to not see the nearby P&W trestle. Even so, in his mind's eye he saw the red and yellow trolley careening from the high track, plunging to the water, killing his parents over and over. After a while he stopped crossing the bridge. Other than that, he went wherever there was room to go forward. Along roads and alleys and railroad tracks, across fields and cemeteries and golf courses. From high above, a tracing of his routes would have looked as hopeless and tangled as a cobble's knot. By nightfall he was back in Two Mills. He would retrieve the satchel from wherever he had stashed it, and find a place to endure the night. A few times he revisited the buffalo pen where he covered himself with a second blanket of straw. Other times his overnight quarters might be abandoned car, an empty garage, a basement stairwell. When his original supply of food ran out, he fed himself at the zoo or at the soup kitchen down at the Salvation Army. He did odd jobs for housewives, ran errands for shopkeepers. He would not beg. One day he found himself among monuments and cannon and rolling hills. He was in Valley Forge. Here the Continental Army had suffered through a winter of their own, and the vast, stark, frozen desolation itself seemed a more proper monument than statues and stones. The only buildings here were tiny log and mortar cabins, replicas of the Army shelters. Maniac could feel the ache swelling outward from his breast and filling the enormous bounding spaces. He returned to town for the satchel and put himself up in one of the cabins. It was scarcely bigger than a large doghouse. The floor was dirt. There was a doorway but no door. Several saltines fell from the blanket. He threw them outside, let the birds have them. He wrapped himself in the blanket and laid down. He lay there all night and all the next day. Dreams pursued memories, courted and danced and coupled with them, and they became one, and the gaunt, beseeching phantoms that called to him had the rag-wrapped feet of Washington's regulars and the faces of his mother and father and Aunt Dot and Uncle Dan and the Beals and Earl Grayson. In that bedeviled army there would be no more recruits. No one else would orphan him. The second evening came and went. Maniac never stirred, knowing it would not be fast or easy and wanting, deserving nothing less. Grimly, patiently, he waited for death.
Maggie, thank you so much. You've done a phenomenal job. And Kiyaya and I really want to thank you for stepping up to the plate when we've needed you to host a few extra episodes. But Forever Fridays returns tomorrow for our final episode and the conclusion of Natalie Babbitt's Tuck Everlasting. We are sorry to see the book end, but I'm sure you're just as excited as Kiyaya and I are to figure out how it ends. Tune in tomorrow. Let's get cozy. With Daniel and Kiyaya, we'll be back. Have a wonderful afternoon. And remember, reading is power.